the recording and go ahead and pull up VS Code. All right. So, as I'm sure you all saw from today's curriculum, today we're going to be talking a little bit about Django testing, which surprisingly or unsurprisingly is pretty similar to a lot of the testing that we've done before with stuff like unit tests. But now we're going to do it with Django, which will be fun. So I've changed up the organization of my usual Django demo page a little bit. So let's see, can I zoom in further? Aha, yes. So if you look off the left, I've set up a little Python thing for in our VS Code with our folder tree for Django. I'm just sticking to Python stuff for now. We're not going to go ahead and test the web pages or HTML or anything like that. But the main thing that we like to test in Django is, since we're now interfacing between the front end and the back end, we have two things we can test. The first one we can test is obviously the website. So if we make HTML pages in Django, we run them, we enter onto the server in the browser. Can I log in? Can I access the web pages I need to? If I'm typing something in a form, does it throw the appropriate errors, and so on. But the second thing that Django is very helpful about as well is testing all our stuff in the back end, like our models and our databases and all of that. So that's what today's lecture is going to be focused on. So again, we've got the Django demo main thing, and then the testing demo smaller application within it. And within that, I've broken it up into a couple of things. So as usual, we've got the PyCache, got my init.py, admin, apps, models, and views. Now, in order to prepare for testing, though, I created a little folder for all of our tests. And there's one reason for that. So let's say, for example, here, let's not go to admin for now. Let's create a new file, and let's just call it tests.py. Now, imagine that we were making a really big, complicated app for testing demo, and we had models for I don't know, let's say we're making like a social media app. So we have models for the users, we have models for posts, models for I don't know, search queries. You could have models for user history, models for comments. And the point being, you could easily have like tens, if not hundreds of models. And if that becomes the case, then you'd probably have a folder for all of your models. You'd have a folder with, say, the user models, folders for the website models, etc. And if you only had a singular file like this test.py in which you put all of your tests, it would look really ugly. So we're not going to do that. Instead, what I'd like you guys to do is create a folder for all your tests. I call it tests. You can call it something else, and I don't know why it just disappeared. But you can call it tests or test or whatnot. And inside of that, I've got an init.py over here, which imports all of the models from my models.py page. So everything from the general models here gets imported into my init. And that's all there is to it. Then I have separate pages here. So I've got API, models, web. You can add more. Basically, each of these files in tests is going to test the name that's associated with it. So for example, if I have the models.py in tests, you can probably guess, that's going to test the models in models.py in the general testing demo. Similarly, if I had an API page up here, then this would have all the API tests, and this would have all the website tests, and so on. So this is the approach that I would recommend taking. I'm going to delete the API and web because we're not going to do those today. But this is the approach that I would recommend using when testing things in Django for starters. Does anybody have questions about that?
Can you show us how to get the test again? Is there like a something you ran in the terminal, or did you just make that file structure there?
Nope, I quite literally just right-clicked, new folder, and then created the folder called tests and added in a models.py in there.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, that should hopefully work. If it doesn't, let me know.
So you have a project and an app there?
Yes,
Okay, the project is Django demo and the app is testing?
it's just this testing demo.
Okay, and then inside there you did your test folder. Okay.
Yep. So testing demo, I mean, like I could have called it like, social media one or whatnot, but since this is the demo for Python test, I just thought I'd call it testing demo. And then inside that, I created another folder specifically for the tests.
Okay.
So, and this is again something that I would recommend you do for every project is just create a little folder for your tests. It'll help out a lot. All right, so if we go back to the init.py in this folder, you'll notice here that I have a from .models import star. And the reason that I have this little line included is so that it can grab the models located from our models.py, namely this guy, and put them into the testing models.py. So here, let me pop this open. Pop this guy open as well. So the other nice thing about VS Code that I really like is when you have two files with the same file name like this, it'll show you what folder they're in. So this one, for example, it says, oh, it's just in general testing demo. And this one says this is models.py specifically for the test, which is really helpful. So I highly recommend taking advantage of this feature while it will hopefully not be removed, hopefully. So let's see. We've got our init.py with the from models import star. I'm going to just out of there, my directory, and enter my virtual environment, which is, let's see. Oh, come on. Django. Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. And now we can change directory back into Django demo and double check I'm in the right folder. And I've got my manage.py right there. Okay, cool. So, we're just going to talk a little bit about testing, and then we're going to have you guys jump into your group assignment for tonight, since there isn't a ton to talk about for testing, honestly. So let's say that we have, well, first off, when I'm creating models.py, what's the first thing I should always do in a blank models.py file?
Don't you import something?
Yep. So what do we import and where do we import it from?
I'm not sure.
That's all right. Again, yeah, the problem with Django is that it has a lot of moving parts, and memorizing all of them is really annoying.
Yes.
But it'll get there in time.
Okay, so looking back, I think it's from Django.db import models, correct?
Yep, that should do it. And let's see, is it going to glitch out? No. Okay. It always says this for some reason, but whenever it shows that, if you're in your virtual environment, just disregard it. But yeah, so we're going to do our from Django.db import models. And we're going to do the exact same thing in our tests. Again, we're testing the models, so we might as well just import our models there, or the general models there as well. So let's go back to this one. So let's say that we want to, I don't know, let's say we want to make a class for, what's something we can make a class for? Yeah, we could do something like for a car, let's say, right? So we'll create a class for a car and we'll say models.model, and we can give it some fields. We could say, I don't know, like license plate, and then we'll make that a character field of max length is like 6, and we could say something like, I don't know, make equals models dot character field, max length equals like 100 for absolutely no reason. We could say like manufacture year equals models dot integer field, and we'll leave it there for now. So this can be one of our models, and let's say that we also have oh yeah, another thing that I also wanted to add was let's say odors, and we can have, because a car's most of the time is owned by somebody, and let's make that let's say like a many to many field, similar to what we would have in something like SQL. And we could say that the to field for this is like person. And then we can create a class called person. I'll do the same thing, models.model. And then let's say like first name equals models.field max length equals 100. And let's say last name is models.field max length also equals 100. So again, like super simple. We're not going to do anything crazy or very groundbreaking here. Honestly, we can take this out. Here, let's take that out. There we go. So we've got two models here, right? So now that I have some new models, what's something I should do before I proceed with running this and writing my tests and all that? Once I make my models, what should I do next?
You should do migration.
Okay, right. So I'm gonna do Python manage.py make migrations. Okay, says no changes detected, and go out of this and make it a little smaller. There we go. Python manage.py. Great. All right, that looks like it probably worked. But let me just double check it real quick by making migrations only for testing demo. Ha, there we go. So it didn't see it before. Now if I run migrate, okay, perfect. So our models are created, but now we need to write some tests. So here, I don't need that. Let's go back to terminal and let's go over to our testing file. So I'm going to actually split screen this and make this guy go all the way over there. So I've got my blank testing file and my models off the left. So again, how would we test something? How would I test normal classes in Python? What would I do if I wanted to test that a class that I set up works properly? So one option would be that we could just write a bunch of example classes. So for example, we could say something like car1 equals car with make and manufacturer year and whatnot. And then just say, hey, if I run XYZ functions on it, does this class break? And if it does, we have a problem. If it doesn't, then we're good. Another thing that we used to use in Python a lot, as of probably like last unit, was unit tests. But of course, we can't exactly use unit tests in Django. We can, but it would be a little bit weird too. Luckily, Django comes very nicely in clutch for us by coming with its own testing library. So what you want to type here is from Django.test import, and I believe it's going to be test case. Yep. We're going to import test case, and then we need to import all my models. So I would say from testing demo dot models import, I'm just going to import star. And now we can write our test cases. So let's call this test models. And class that we're basing this off of is test case. And now we can write testing functions. So we could say something like define, let's say like as owner for a car, for example. So I could set up a new car, and I could say something like car1 equals car objects dot create. I could say something like make equals Toyota and manufacture year equals 1990, for example. And then we could test this by saying like owner1 equals person dot objects dot create. I could say something like first name equals John, last name equals Joe, and the last part now, just to make sure that this will work, is we can say car1 dot owners dot set to be our iterable of owner1. And the last thing that we want to do here is we can use our handy assert equal function just to double check, hey, is the number of owners of this car equal to 1? So let's see if this will work. So go over here and I go to, and check them in the right directory, Python manage.py. And oh, before I do that though, just double check my init function, not that one, test init. So I'm importing everything from here into there, so that shouldn't cause us any problems. And now I can run my test functions. I can say Python manage.py test and then testing demo. Okay. Well, it looks like it ran without any problems. But now it says that I ran 0 tests in 0 seconds. Does anybody have any idea why it might be saying that?
Hey, Umar, you have this really weird box covering your tests. I'm not really sure what it is.
Is
But
the
it's-
box gone
Yeah.
now?
There you go. Yep.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Here, let me zoom in real quick. Yeah, I think it's the zoom thing for some reason. Let's see. So class person, that exists. The car class exists. Imported the tests. Oh, here, let me try remigrating everything. That might help. Make migrations again. Migrate that. And try running the tests. Okay, this was literally working 10 minutes ago. All right, so class test models. Defining our function.
You have to have like a related name when you said car.owners. Where's the owners coming from?
Oh, that would be this guy over here.
Oh, okay, for many to many, you got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's weird is that it's not acknowledging the fact that this is a test function, which is interesting. Let's see. So importing test case and importing all the models. And this is the test file.
By chance, you need to change directory into your testing demo, like your app.
That actually wouldn't work because so right now, if I'm in Django demo, which is this big folder over here, that one has manage.py inside of it. So whenever you're running stuff in the console in Django, you can't really go inside of the app directories because those don't have a manage.py inside of them.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, gotcha.
Excuse me, Umar, do you
Yep.
need do you need the word test in your function name? The name of your method?
If that ends up being it, that will be very interesting, and I have a hunch that it might be. Okay, turns out that is it. Thank you for that catch, Cassie. Okay, so we need
No
tests
problem.
in our testing functions. Good to know. And again, thank you for that. I was going to like go through every single line of this code at this point. But yeah, so again, we can see here, this looks really similar to our unit tests. We're creating, again, if we go to the top of this, it says it found a test because we wrote test in the function name. It created a testing database and it ran a system check and it said our code didn't break. It ran the test and the test didn't break and now it destroyed the database. And this is like the simplest way for us to test models in Django. Now we can do the exact same thing. We can do it the other way. For example, we could say it has a car, for example, and we could again keep the exact same setup with our car, with our person, but now instead of setting the owners of the car, we could set, let's say, how can we do this? Oh, yeah, there we go. So we could set something like owner one dot, what do we call it here? So I guess be car set, then dot add, we would add car one, and then we would want to check, for example, whether owner one now has a car. And that's again, we could write another test, basically doing the exact same thing, but just flipping it on its head. And this could work as well. So does anyone have any questions about just like the general rationale behind how our Django testing works? And or anything of that sort? Okay, so there is like basically one more thing or two more things that we should test before I give you all the problem set for tonight. So the first thing is string representation. So how do I represent something as a, how do I represent a class as a string in Python?
Choose the dunder string method there.
Yep. So how do I write a dunder string method, if you can remind me?
You just say def string, underscore underscore string underscore self. Yep, and then you return an f string with interpolate the values that you want.
Pretty much, yeah. So let's do that for a car, for example, and we could say we can return make and then manufacture. Oh, we need the self dot manufacture year, and that can be our string function for the car. Now, how can we test whether a string representation works or not? So, well, we need to write another test function. We do test car string, for example, and we could say we have, again, we'll just define the exact same car here, and we can just do a self dot assert equal, and we can just say string car1, and we'll double check that's equal to Toyota 1990, for example. And if we run that, again, it says that test is okay as well. So testing, again, we can test string methods. We can test any dunder method. You can, for example, if you were to create like a comparison method for two models, like using the greater than or less than dunder methods, you can test those out by creating two objects and testing whether one is greater than or less than the other in this way, which is great. I mean, there's a lot of really helpful things that we can do using this sort of testing. But let's say that, again, this is pretty simple. We have like two models with like 2 or 3 fields each. We can handwrite test cases for those. Nice and simple. But hypothetically, let's say that we had like a model with like 50 fields for some reason. Maybe we're writing up like a giant database of like people, and it has like, I don't know, like the census or something. And it has like their name, their age, their phone number, their social security number, where they live, how much they earn, if they have a car. And like, again, this is like tons of fields. And handwriting test cases for each one of those is really, really not fun. So we can use a tool called Model Bakery in order to help us do this. Let me see if I can put this in I'll put it in the Slack channel. But basically, you can create a bunch of fields for your Django functions using it. And the way you install that is basically saying pip install model _ bakery. And it's already installed for me, which is great. And if you guys want to install that, I definitely recommend it. And after that, if we want to test it, basically need to do from model bakery, which we do have here. Model bakery, import, and I believe what we need to import is baker. And okay, it'll resolve itself shortly in any case. And we can add in a test case for, let's say, so we could say something like define test multi-cars, or test generic car self, and then we could say something like car1 equals baker dot make, I believe is the function. Yes, and then we can plug in our right here. Let's do person instead. Say person1, change this to generic person, and this will basically fill in. So if I say, let's say first name equals John, then what we can do is basically double check. Okay, no, let's do Carl. Yeah, that's easier because we can test that a little bit more simply. Here, let's say make equals Honda. So what this function will do is going to randomize the value in manufacturer year, because baker.make, if you go to the GitHub page that I popped in the chat, that will basically come up with a random string or integer or double or whatever field value you have and fill that in. So instead of handwriting, let's say Toyota 1990, it says it'll do like Toyota like 127553 blah 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 or something like that. And again, it's a little bit overblown to use it in a small test case like this, but it's available for it, and definitely is very helpful for larger ones. So that's a quick overview of how you use Model Bakery as well. Is there anything else that's good to test right now? Honestly, not really. I mean, there are a lot of other tests that you can do, like testing things, for example, in dictionaries or testing post requests, etc. But for the purposes of this evening's challenge, we probably won't need those. But I'll provide a longer link to that in the Slack channel as well if you guys want a lot more information on all of the different tests that you can run using this test case feature in Django. And yeah, that's honestly about it for a lecture this evening. There isn't a ton to cover outside of that. So does anybody have questions, comments, concerns, things of that nature before we move on to tonight's problem?
Yes. So in our tonight's problem, it says that we need to input some information into post and comment via the Django shell. So within the Django shell, are we inputting information the same way that we're kind of writing our test cases here? Or can you show us an example of how you would input some of that information?
Try. So first off, what is the Django shell? Can anybody remind me what that is?
From yesterday, Jordan was kind of showing us a quick example of how he used the Django shell to put in information into the database.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so to go to the Django shell, first thing I want to make sure is I'm not running anything, and I'm not. The second thing I want to make sure of is that I'm in that folder with my manage.py. Manage.py is there. So in order to get into the Django shell, we need to type Python manage.py shell. And now I'm basically in a Django console. So I can also exit this by just typing exit, and I exit the console. So it acts very similar if I were to just type Python exit, just like that. It basically does the same thing. Any questions about entering the Django shell or exiting it?
When you use shell plus, you have to use that after you install Django extensions, I believe. Is that correct? Because it makes it look different.
I am not sure. I honestly do not use the Django shell too much.
Okay, I just
but
saw it in videos. No problem. I know it works with just shell. Yeah.
Yeah, shell is like the easiest way to use it.
Yeah.
But again, there are other ways to do so as well. But yeah, shell plus I have heard is a little bit more visually appealing than shell, which is, as you can tell, pretty basic. So
But with this command, you don't have to pre-install anything else. It just works like
nope.
that.
Yeah, you should, if you have pip installed Django, if you're in your virtual environment that's running Django, and if you're in the folder with your manage.py, then you should be pretty good to go. Yep.
Great. Thanks.
All right, so I'm in my shell here, and I can, define variables and such. I can say something like if c equals 4 and I want to print c, it's 4. I can say something like, again, this is just normal Python. I can say 1 plus 2 and it gives me 3, and so on and so forth. But again, the difference between this and just typing Python is we're now clued in to our Django. And what I can do here is import some models and start playing around with them. So let's close out of this guy. And let's say that I want to import some people. So what I could do is I could say from, let's see, so the folder that this is in is Django demo, and I want to go into my app, which is testing demo. And I'm going to go to my models. I want to import person. All right, so I've imported the person class, which is good. And I can now create a table. I can say, let's see, person dot objects dot all. And all right, well, that decided to happen. Okay, well, let's see. Mhm. Well, in general, this command is supposed to work and create a table at the same time. I'm not exactly sure why it's deciding not to create a table at this point, but I will debug that a little bit after. But basically, after you type this, what you should be able to do is create a new person object. So I could say something like person1 equals person, and I would say something like first name equals hi, last name equals hello, and then I can access, let's see, person1 dot first name, and it gives me their first name and last name. I'm not sure why the table creation didn't work at this time. Again, generally it should, but if you have created a table that your Django models can populate, then you can also save this to that table. Again, the save doesn't work right now because it's giving me this very weird no such table error that I'm going to check about after I send you guys off. But you can also save it to that table. And again, I can make new objects like this. I can get their attributes and I can set them and so on. So hopefully that helps answer a little bit of your questions about how to deal with the Django shell.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that actually does. I was just looking to see how to input the information. If you don't mind though, just real quick, would you mind scrolling up to where I could see some of the first commands that you put in? And I think I'll be solid.
Okay, apparently my headphones decided to just die. So would you mind repeating your comment real quick?
Yeah. No, yeah, it does help. Thank you for showing us the shell there. If you don't mind, could you scroll up so I could see some of the first commands that you were showing us in the terminal there?
Sure, yeah, I mean, I can honestly exit it and restart it too. So Python manage.py shell, open up a brand new shell, and I can go, let's see, well, interesting. All right, so yeah, now that I'm in the shell, the first thing that I need to do is import the models. So I'll go from, again, the folder that I'm in right now, as per this guy, is my Django demo, which is this big folder. So I need to go into my testing demo and then go to my models. And from there, I can import any models that I want from it. Say I want to import person. And now I can create new people and I can say like person, first name equals hi, last name equals bye. And then I can do stuff like p1 dot first name and I can get their first name, for example. Oh, go ahead.
No. Yeah, that's awesome.
But again, the only thing is this creates models, but it doesn't save them to a table or anything like that. And if you wanted to save it to a table, then you'd have to instantiate a table, which I still don't understand why this isn't working. Let's try this again. Person objects all. It keeps saying that there's no such table. I think there's probably because there's no relations, but it is no matter. Generally, that should work. And then if that were working, then again, we have that new person p1, which is our person object. We do p1.save, and that p1.save command would save your new person, person1, to that table of all the persons. So that's how you can add objects to Django using this shell.
Awesome. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody else have questions about the Django shell?
After creating objects and saving them, do you have to run migrations again?
Um,
I mean, make migrations.
mm, you shouldn't have to. Because so the migrations and migrate are generally for when you make changes like in the Python code.
see.
If I'm going to add like a brand new class, for example, or a brand new table, then you'd want to migrate those changes. But if I'm just adding and removing objects from a database, you shouldn't have to.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, so if not, I'm going to go ahead, pull up the homework problem for today. Hopefully you guys can see this all right. So today's problem is going to be posts and comments. So you're going to create an app where you can view posts and comments. You are going, again, today is going to be team-based as usual. So hopefully if you guys want to mess around with VS Code and use the live share feature, I highly recommend that. And let's see. And you're just going to create your app. You want to configure 2 routes in your urls.py. You want to set up your databases and populate them. And then release 4 is the last thing that you should do, which is creating HTML views. You don't need to use CSS or anything totally complicated for this. It's just, create some fields and display some stuff. That's pretty much about it. Also, just a heads up, I am going to be ending class a little bit earlier tonight. It's going to be ending at 8 Pacific or 8 Central, which is 9 Eastern. So you guys should have just about 2 hours or so to get to work on the challenge. What I hope that should be enough time. But if anybody feels like they aren't able to get it done at that time or anything, don't worry about it. Yeah, that's about it. So any questions before I create the groups and send you guys off? Okay, so breakouts are open. I'm going to create the groups in about a minute here and slot them out. And I will talk to you all soon. Let me know, as always, if you have any questions.